Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over the rifle that you see in my hands right here and that you saw in the intro. This is the Wilson Combat Recon Tactical in 458 SOCOM. So that's kind of the big thing about this. Of course, Wilson Combat has been making the Recon Tactical AR-15s for a while now, and they make them in several calibers, including this 458 SOCOM monster that we have here. So basically the story of this rifle, at least how it appeared on the channel, begins back at SHOT Show. So I was out at SHOT and Freedom Munitions announced their Big Grains line, and in that line of ammunition, they announced a 458 SOCOM, and the goal for them was to create big grain or big bore type ammo that was a lot more affordable than what was currently available on the marketplace. And 458 SOCOM was one of the rounds, along with 500 Magnum and 50 AE, I believe. So the price for the ammo dropped dramatically, which was one of the things that was keeping a lot of people from picking up some of these big bore rifles. And that was a good thing. And of course, Freedom Munitions is one of my ammo sponsors, so that's a good thing for me because I put an order in for the ammo as well as this rifle here over at Wilson Combat for one to test and evaluate here on the channel, which is exactly what I've been doing for probably the last 6 or 7 months now, so a good bit. And it's got a lot of rounds through it. It's just fun to shoot. Every time you shoot it, it kind of makes you smile because basically what you're doing is you're launching huge projectiles at about 1,800 to 2,000 feet per second and getting the energy of what you would get out of a 45-70 into a semi-automatic, relatively lightweight AR-15. This particular rifle weighs right around 7 pounds, and again, you're launching things that are ballistically equivalent to the 45-70. So pretty cool experience overall. But what we're going to do next, of course, is let the dogs take a look at it, put a few more rounds through it, step outside and see what kind of accuracy we can get out of this rifle with this caliber, and then come back in and get into all the details of the rifle.
Now we're going to see what kind of accuracy we can get out of this little rig here. We're going to test a few different loads. I actually shot this a few weeks ago for a group, so I have an idea of what it's going to do, but you never really know. We haven't used this round at all. So this is the Freedom Munitions 458 SOCOM load. It's 300 grains. It is a round nose flat point bullet, and Freedom actually makes everything in here. So they make the actual brass and the bullet itself. And they did that to try to keep down the cost of these. One of the big wigs over there at Freedom is a huge big bore guy, and he wanted to bring big grain stuff to the market and at a much better price point than anybody else is doing. So I think this load and several others are going to increase the sales for a lot of different rifles, this one included in 458 SOCOM, because the price on this is pretty good. So this is what we got in there right now. We're going to see what it'll actually do accuracy-wise. It's not meant to be a match load or anything like that. It's meant to be a Plinken load for a good price, so we'll see what it will do. Target is downrange at 100 yards. So what we got on there is the Bushnell Elite Tactical 1 to 6.5 rather, and sitting in a Weaver mount. Glass is plenty good and plenty of magnification for this range. So we'll see what it'll do. All right, so that's actually pretty good, at least from what I can see here. It's better than I expected with that. So next up, we got a Wilson Combat load. This is the 300 grain BT bullet. It's rated for 1,725 feet per second out of this rifle. So we'll see what that'll do. One thing I should point out while we're shooting here is that this rifle obviously has Wilson Combat's trigger in it, and that makes it really nice. There's sort of a mental desire, if you will, for anyone shooting this rifle to want to flinch. And the trigger takes that impetus away because it's so nice, so crisp. Makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to focus on pulling it too hard. So we're going to see what this load will do out of this rifle. All right. Next up, we have a different load there from Wilson Combat. This one here is their 300 grain TTSX. So all the loads here actually have been 300 grain today. I have other ones. I thought I grabbed a different grain. I guess I did not. However, this is a totally different bullet. This is actually the bullet I shot a couple weeks ago off camera and got really good results with. So we're gonna see how this one does, but it was pretty good before. So if it doesn't do it here, I'll tell you all about it. If it does it here, I'll tell you. You'll see it, rather. So, yep, it is the TTSX bullet again. This one's rated for 7,150 feet per second out of this barrel. Let's go check them out. First, the big grains load there from Freedom Munitions. We're right at 3.5 inches on that one. Then we came over here with that first Wilson load. And center to center, we're right at 2 3/4 inches. This is the one I had hoped for because actually, I'll tell you now, a couple weeks ago, I shot a sub MOA group with that. And think about that, the diameter of the bullet is 4.58. So in order to keep the center in there, that was tight. So this one almost did it, but we had that one go up. We're right there at 1.5 inches on that one. So as you can see, it's obviously ammo dependent like most rifles, but if you get a load that your rifle likes, even in 458 SOCOM, this thing will shoot.
Getting into the details, we'll start up front and work our way back. We do have the Wilson Combat Q-Comp muzzle device on there, and as you guys can see, it does have a closed bottom, and then it has these vented slots there from the 3 to 9 o'clock position, and those are going to direct gases outward and upward, keeping the muzzle down and reducing the recoil impulse into your shoulder, as well as muzzle rise, as well as does give you a little bit of flash hider effect as well. So it's sort of a good overall muzzle device. They also offer a 3-prong flash hider for those of you guys that just want to eliminate as much flash signature as possible, and that it is threaded, I believe, 11 by 16 by 24 underneath there. So if you want to add a suppressor, most companies out there who are making suppressors in the 458 SOCOM or 500 Beowulf, any of those calibers, will be familiar with that thread pitch and do offer either adapters or direct thread for that. The barrel is a 16-inch barrel, and it is made out of 416R stainless steel. This particular one has a 1 in 14 twist rate, so that merits a little bit of discussion there on its own. So basically, there's 2 twist rates that you're going to see out there on the market for 458 SOCOM. Generally speaking, it's going to be the 1 in 22 twist rate and the 1 in 14 twist rate. So the 1 in 22 is optimized for some of the lighter bullets out there, so basically things from 250 grain all the way up to, say, 325, 350 grain. And then the 1 in 14 is optimized for the heavier bullets. So generally speaking, 350 grain all the way up to the 600 grain ones that you're going to see out there, those generally are going to be subsonic loads in this particular chambering. So this one is optimized for the heavier ones, but you can kind of pick which one you want depending on what your intended use for the rifle is itself. As you guys can see a little bit there underneath the handguard, we do have an adjustable gas block. It's got the set screws that are properly dimpled and then set into place there with the high temp thread locker. And I didn't adjust this at all as it came from the factory. I ran all different types of loads through it, different powers and different velocities. And I actually have a test over on the B channel if you guys want to see some chrono results and basically the kind of energy we're getting out of there. But it's pretty impressive stuff. Basically 2,200, 2,300 feet per second, or rather foot-pounds, is what we're getting from those loads, and really that's delivering a lot of hurt from the AR pattern rifle, so it's kind of a cool thing. But I do also have a suppressor on the way from Bowers Group, and when we get that in, you're going to need that adjustable gas block to be able to regulate it and make sure the timing of the rifle is correct. So I do like that feature of the rifle. The handguard is a 10.4-inch Wilson Combat handguard with the key mod slots at the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock position. The reason we went with that length instead of something a little bit longer is that it allows us to easily adjust the gas block with standard Allen wrenches rather than having to get a really long one or a special tool or something like that. And for that role, it works just fine. And they have key mod slots at the 6, 9, and 3 o'clock position. I believe they have the M-Lock version of this out now, but when I ordered this rifle, that was not the case. So we went with key mod to keep it nice and lightweight. I know there's a lot of debates out there between key mod and M-Lock, and in my opinion, both work fine for most folks. And of course, up here on the top, we do have a 1913 rail, but it does have cutouts on the top portion of it to keep it nice and lightweight. Try to reduce weight wherever we can, but any of your lasers, lights, or anything like that, you can mount on there, and they'll hold zero just fine because it is to 1913 spec. Both the upper and lower receiver are made of forged 7075 T6 aluminum. It is hard coat anodized underneath the finish that you see here, and I should, I guess, discuss that now. So the finish on this rifle is the burnt bronze oxidized finish, and you can see obviously it's got the brown on there, and then the oxidized is sort of the green highlights that they did there. It's an excellent job by Wilson Combat in terms of the finish. I think it just looks awesome all the way around. I actually saw a picture of a rifle done up with a similar paint job on their site, and I decided that was the one I wanted to go with for sure. But this is the forged upper and lower, like I said. And one thing of note is that with 458 SOCOM, they actually modify the upper receiver just a bit, as you guys can see here in this drawing. So the reason they do that is sort of just to open everything up to make sure those really large cases can eject out of there without getting hung up in the ejection port. So close it all up, you can see it does have the Recon tactical dust cover on there, as well as the Wilson Combat logo rather here on the lower receiver, and also on the upper receiver on this side in 458 SOCOM written there as well. So it looks good overall. It also has a flared mag well, which I do like. It has a nice bevel to it to aid in mag changes, and we have the Wilson Combat trigger guard on there. And then of course we have the Bravo Company Starburst grip, which is customized by Wilson Combat with their logo and the extra traction in there. So it's nice relatively vertical grip, give you a nice comfortable firing position when you're firing from the shoulder or even down in the prone position. It's a little bit more ergonomic than the standard A2 that's going to have a little bit more of an angle to it. The bolt carrier group of the rifle is NP3 coated all the way around, and you can see we do have a full auto profile on the carrier. Gas key there is staked as you would expect from Wilson Combat. Did a good job there. It's not going to come loose. And then on the bolt itself is NP tested, and it is shot peened as well, and it is 9310 steel. So the debate on the 9310 versus 158 Carpenter steel for bolt material will, I suppose, go on forever, but according to folks in the know, if you properly heat treat it, 9310 is slightly stronger than 158. Now, I'm guessing Wilson Combat went with that because if you look at the actual bolts side by side, this is a standard 5.56 bolt, and then of course our 458 SOCOM one here. You have less surface there on the edge, and I think they wanted the extra strength there for that round because it has to be milled out for the 458 SOCOM round. So you can see just how much is actually taken out for the larger diameter of the case in the rim there. So that would be my guess as to why they went 9310 when some of their other bolts are 158. And then the charging handle itself is the Bravo Company. This is the Mod 4 charging handle. At this point, a very proven commodity. It does well. It gives you a little bit of a bigger latch there to catch on to, but it's not huge like some of the aftermarket ones that are going to snag in your gear. Never had a problem with this one, and I have this particular charging handle on probably 6 or 7 rifles, so safe to say I'm a fan. Before I throw this rifle back together, one thing I wanted to point out was the actual feed rent there on the barrel. So you can see as you look through the ejection port, there aren't standard M4 feed ramps, and that's because they blend it all together with the upper receiver to create sort of one gigantic feed ramp. And again, that's just due to the fact that the 458 SOCOM is so large when it's going in there. And I'm going to grab a magazine here real quick off camera and kind of show you guys how it feeds. So when it feeds from a magazine, which we're going to get into in detail here in just a second, it's basically feeding from the center of the mag. So you can see there, it's cut out there. So that way you have one feed ramp for each time it goes in there. It just looks funny if you're used to the M4 feed ramps, but it makes sense when you actually see the feed angle on the mag here. As I believe I mentioned during the accuracy portion on the trigger, you just can't complain about it at all. It's a single stage trigger, and it breaks right at 4 pounds on my scale. There's just the slightest amount of take up, as you guys can see there, and then once you hit that wall, it just breaks super clean. There's, again, nothing to complain about at all, and the reset is excellent as well. Wilson Combat's TTU triggers are excellent. I've actually done a review on them in the past, and this particular one is probably my favorite. I like the single stage. Of course, they make others as well that are all great. And moving on back, one thing you'll notice if I pull the pin out is that it has a little rubber gasket in there, and that's to ensure a nice snug fit when you put the lower, or rather when you put the upper on there. It's going to have literally no play at all between it, at least in my example anyway. Buffer is a standard buffer, at least as far as I can tell, but we do have an extra power spring inside that extension. The extension itself is a 6-position 7075 T6 aluminum mil-spec extension, and they say that that extra power spring aids in reliability with the 458 SOCOM round according to their testing. I certainly have no reason to doubt them on that, but just pointing it out as something that's a little bit different from your standard AR lower. The stock itself is the Rogers Super Stock. It's been around for a long time, and it's a good one. I've never had an issue with it. It's adjustable, of course, to all different positions. One thing people always want to know is, does it collapse all the way down? It doesn't. There's a little bit of a gap there, but it has many ways you can actually attach a sling. You can do it either over the top like this or through some of these pieces as well, depending on how thick your actual sling is. And it also has the QD points. One thing I like about it is the angle here of the toe. When you're bringing it up to your shoulder, it's very comfortable, very ergonomic, whether you're wearing body armor or not. Now we're going to get into the magazine question, because this is one of the most frequent ones I got from my viewers when showing photos of this rifle on social media. So a few things to consider. Number one, the feed angle, like we showed you earlier, the way it feeds into the chamber is very different than your standard AR-15, and that's again due to the size of the round. Now Wilson Combat sent these 2 mags here with the rifle. These are traditionally Lancer 20-round mags, but the way they modify them, they are 7-round mags with the 458 SOCOM. And then this here is a mag I modified myself, which I'll show you here in just a second. Of course, it's a 30-round Lancer mag, and now it takes 10 rounds. And then here we have another mag. This is a 6.8 mag here. I believe it's by PRI, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, PRI. And a lot of folks recommended this to me as well as a mag to try out. And then we have a standard USGI mag here just to kind of show you the differences and what kind of goes on with it. So if you take a look here, we have this mag loaded up with some Wilson Combat rounds. This is the, as you guys can see, sort of a pointed tip round. And then over here on the left, we have the Freedom Munitions round, which is, as you can see, a blunt type of bullet. With 20-round mags, I never had a single malfunction of any kind, regardless of how I was shooting. So ran perfect with that, ran perfect, again, regardless of ammo, no issues at all. With the 30-round mags, something I found. So I have a couple of these Lancers that I modified, and basically to modify it, what I did was take the front portion and sort of mill it down. So if you look compared to a standard USGI mag, I basically took the rounded portion of this out. And the reason is, I'll show you real quick, if I were to put a 458 SOCOM round in here, you'll see that basically when it goes to feed, it's going to get stuck on the front of that feed lip versus how it is with the modification here. So that's why I did that. Now, one thing I found with the 30-round mag, it ran perfectly every time with any type of ammo if I was standing up or shooting from the prone without putting the mag on the ground. I put the mag on the ground. If I was using the Freedom Munitions rounds, they would occasionally hang up on the feed ramp, and I'm guessing that's because if I'm putting pressure on the rifle, it's kind of pointing it down, and just kind of the nature of the beast with a homemade modification like that. The same was true for this PRI mag, which I'll put a link down below for anybody looking for these. I picked it up over at Brownells, but the same exact thing would happen with the Freedom Munitions round here. It would work 100% fine if I was standing or shooting, not putting it on the ground. As soon as I put it on the ground, occasionally with the Freedom Munitions bullets, due to their shape, I would have a malfunction. Now, with the Wilson Combat bullets, which of course have a very different shape to their bullet, both of these worked 100% when shooting from the prone, even with the mag on the ground. So sort of was a trial and error for me to figure that out, and it took quite a few rounds for me to kind of see a pattern as to what was going on there. Sort of trial and error. We got it narrowed down and figured it all out. So that's kind of my magazine modification and sort of function report there for you guys. A lot of folks really recommended these 6.8 mags, and I found they did work well for the caliber, but of course you can modify any of your AR-15 mags. Wilson says they recommend the Lancer mags due to their research and what they've found. You guys can kind of see just the way it feeds there. It does look like it's going to feed extremely well with the design of that mag. But I wanted to mention that just because I know it's a question that was going to come up if I didn't. So you guys can see there, again, with the Wilson mags, they're opened up in a similar fashion to what I did to this one here, my homemade one. Typically at this point in the video, I go over reliability, but we kind of just went into that with the magazines. Provided I was using the right setup, it had zero issues. And again, we didn't adjust the gas block at all. So if I tuned it for each load, it may even be a little bit softer recoiling than what you guys have seen here on camera so far. And speaking of that, I'm sure some of the slow motion shots that you guys have seen so far looked kind of punishing on me. And recoil impulse is sort of similar to a 12 gauge semi-automatic shotgun with like buckshot or slugs. So it's manageable. It's not terrible. The slow motion makes it look worse than it is in real life. But you do feel it when you fire it, and it definitely kicks a little harder than like a 223 for sure. Once we get that Bauer suppressor on there, I expect that to sort of tame the recoil impulse a little bit and sort of make it more of a push rather than sort of a blunt shove that it kind of is now. But it's fun to shoot. I mean, I've handed this rifle to probably 4 or 5, probably more than that, probably 6 or 7 actually at this point, people, and every single one of them that shot it has smiled immediately when they do so. So it's definitely fun, and it's definitely different than when you're shooting 5.56 out of it for sure. Fit and finish, of course, are awesome on the rifle, exactly as you'd expect from Wilson Combat. There's really no way you could complain about that. And I know one thing a lot of people want to know about, of course, with anything Wilson Combat is the price point, and the rifle is not cheap. There's no getting around that. This one here, depending on the package you pick, because you can go through and pick all different types of things, the different lengths rails, different barrels, you can pick different color schemes, all that stuff, but it's generally going to be $2,500 to $2,800, so not cheap for sure, but it is an excellent rifle. So sometimes certain rifles aren't for everybody. Not everyone wants a Lexus. Some folks want a Toyota, and that's fine. But if you want a very well put together 458 SOCOM rifle that's going to run well, this certainly is one I would take a look at. So if you guys have any other questions about the rifle, you can always post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you in the next video.